So they have time metric and streamline satellite interference. Just gonna offline communication on TikTok. 11:30. Time does definitely fly by. It's amazing how it tracks the communication center to all operations surface and position communication settings. We all have to understand that the modifications to our consoles and everything through modulation has to really understand how we adapt to everything inside locations. How we see ourselves is how we perceive ourselves. Accept what you have and stop worrying what you don't have. That's not abundance in manifestations. People get confused with that side location through its settings. So if you don't appreciate what you have in front of you, how are you going to get anything in that set location through its systems? Because that's the only thing you're concentrating on. And a lot of people have a position locations and settings, and they just have one direct view of where they want to be. Well, why not be all volumes of where you want to be through all perception? Be everywhere in that set location settings. It's like having so many atoms and putting them in all one position. No, you put them in all different directions. That's consciousness of set locations because you know where they are in all set position, right? Complacing them in one line connection is a cluster, right? It's not good. Too many wires, lines, disposition location lines of valves, high calculation string location setting, into all levels of electrical line communication and confusion, right? We all have to understand how this all works inside locations, right? Your mind adaptation line center of your consciousness is reaching higher lines, high communication to its settings now through the positions to your cortex. Calculation setting to your cerebral line streamline interference is bringing more line calculation to your wires and how to use it through your chakra certification system and track communications. It's all levels of generation string location settings, right? Because you guys are coming into new ground lines of 91 line settings and phenomenal line rotation. In that track communication setting, this opens up all levels of provisional location to your systems and track communication and settings. All right. All right. So it's Friday. And center position locations to understand how to use it. So always find time to really get to know more of yourself. Create something new inside line settings. Try to get into more levels of you through observation. Try to see yourself in a different version of you. Try to really understand how to create other line calculations of you. Try to understand more levels of you in the inner child. It's amazing when you really get into that adaptation to its system locations. This helps you always informs. Okay. So in that track communication line stream, we come into bracket stream locations. Now the center line communications line settings, father lines, mothers, and center position locations of yin and yang is in process calculations, right? So the space line and the communication comes in line calculation of house, direction of time sequence, puts positional plateaus in calculation of its brackets of zero line correlation settings into 91 track communication and center position. Now, the circle line rotation surface sets lines, track lines, high calculation stream locations in higher levels of channel lines and center position of operation. Now, in that center line calculation, center lines at surface and center positions, it operates in line calculations. Plateau lines of 24 into 48, 48 lines of calculation stream location is 72, in position of center lines in position line calculation setting at 5 set locations of directions. Okay. So it's amazing how we set these things up through equation line stream locations. So the templates and the tablets and line streamline interference comes into a higher calculation stream locations into your pyramid reset location of programs, directing signal location to your systems and position of track lines. Now in the third signal become one line signature, one stream down line rotation line setting. Okay. So I'm using lacing line frames and Fibonacci squirrels in set location line settings. Okay. In circle and line rotation and surface and triangulation, height calculation setting and center position of operation. Okay. Now, once you get into the high lines of swirl lines, it sets lines communication to its systems, comes into a etheric line rotation surface and a 12 line signal in line position of operation, center position attraction. Okay. Now that holds all panels and rotation surface. Now the graph line center line interference sets the line center location 90 into one sector in line calculations 3, 4, set of position locations because you're in a 7-track communication with digital lines of numbers and center position of 1 and a new operation surface and the ground lines that cross locations. Now in that line center line interference, we change the rotation spin. That spins its line rotations into another line communication of center of operation surface and set locations. Okay? Now the open sequence line stream sets line communication in your settings. This is where we come into the pyramid lines, into hieroglyphic locations. The oscillological line calculates the streamline conditions, changes the graph lines in position to your energetic line waves. Factory reset line travels line in direction of time sequence puts position of center lines. Graph line calculates the setting and position location to its settings. Okay. Now, understanding the calculation line stream is really redirecting position location to your panels and position to your keyboards and frame lines of computer operation. See the computer? All right. So the frame communication comes in lacing lines. All right. So you can bracket communications into console calculation navigation lines. All right. Point lines and string locations into point settings and direct signal and set locations. All right. So that setup line setting, frame communications in founders of space and Mother Earth line track communications. Now the center line calculation setting is yin and yang of its process, but it's got to stay in the center position of tractions. That rotates its surface location setting into a heat signature line rotation spin that operates a single line in its computer operation of a CPU of operation locations. All right, done by equation. Okay. So getting in that direct signal, this is how it operates the system locations. But it's very powerful when you see these things through tractions. All right, so that's going to be a line signal. So the interlinking in program location settings in your CPU line rotation, tracks lines, factoring line calculation setting. Now this comes into reset line. Okay. Track communication lines is volume, crosses signals, inside location, timestamps, box lines, triangulation line center interference, drag the signal locations in one line of atom and rotation surface, another line of atom, and another circle location setting, direct signal its locations. Now in that systematic line center, changes line communication to your system in line positions to alpha, delta, theta, and omega line rotation of center surface. Directing lines of rotation spins, directing signal locations, operation, and 4 lines of track line communication for spherical spheres and location of travel lines. Directing lines of 2 panels. The 2 panels of operation of space and direct signal locations. Founders of space and Mother Earth is on 2 panels. I'm always in the center now. But that's how it's set up through its operation line set location system. So working with the track line communication line setting is the yin and yang of its process. Okay, coming into the northeast and coming into the south of its west set location system. Triangulation line sets high position locations, high volumes, centers its direct location system in yin and yang, the process of position traction. Putting line center line interference into 4 set locations of centers of 0 line rotations in yin and yang process of position location and projections. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so we come into panel streams. Okay, gone, but still there. Hey, Jets, how you doing? I know, we're just getting so many communication lines with time frames, losing track communication with settings, going fast wind cycles. Clock line settings, high rotation surface, directing line rotation settings, position of sun line. Sun line calculates streamline to center position across stream. Directing line positions of panels and high position locations of pi as set location of travel lines. Directing lines of graphs and position locations into 4 and line set locations into 3. We're always working with 4 of 3 line setting because it's your 7-digital code. And that's not going to change anything in that set location setting and your direct signals because that is your identification line stream interference into your 12 foundation graph line in its rotation surface of its sun, of its projection location, and its moon operation to its surface location settings and direct signal. Okay, so in that position location, we change the oscillological lines of colors, redirecting signal position of the panels. All right. Now the rotation spin lines of high calculation stream location system. Directing line centers of 3-track communications. Okay. This console is a modification line stream. This puts position of track communications in high setting. 3 measures and correlation settings, a 2 box and 1 triangulation line set. Okay. So we do the opposite line setting. Set location setting the box line, space line communications, all right? Directing signal locations, planet surface, rotates the send locations. So we use arrow points and direct line dots, high center calculate stream locations and center position, operation surface, and triangulation at all set location. Okay. So the 4 sequence line center line kinetized system sets 4 lines of 3, 3 lines of 4, 4 lines of 3, 3 lines of 4, 3 lines of 5, and 5 lines of 6, and 7 line setting. In position of 8 and 9 in set lines of calculations, in position of ground lines, in 1 line rotation surface, and another track communication setting, in direct signal half pipe, a position of track line, and communication. Okay, very complicated set location of travel settings. Okay, very powerful when you see line communications, guys, and directions. Okay, all through console communications. Portal calculation line settings, understand all levels of motivation. Right, really understand how to use it location. All through the connections of its half pipe in its realms of position of attractions and set location. Okay, very powerful, isn't it? All right, so that's set up line calculation setting. The 2 panels on line streaming line rotation is set position attractions. Okay. So we're going to set signals, waiting on that, set location line directions. Now this is where we come into our calculation lines. This is the classic lines of a vacuum line rotation in center positions. Center calculations, 1 line center, directing signals. That's going to get complicated because we're going to go through 4 through 3 lines and direct signal locations. Now in that indication line interference, you have the 0 graph lines, 0 lines of 1 and position locations into 2 and track communications. Directing signal lines of center lines of 3, 3 lines and 3 line position locations in 1 panel line stream locations across the signal. Center calculation lines of 3 line indicates lines of electrical line wires, redirect signal locations of panels, travel calculation stream locations, indirect signal to 2 lines of 0 line position operation of surface, triangulation line interference. So we take the 0 lines into position of 1, 1 position of 2 and 3 and 4, 5 lines of 6 and high center line setting, 7, 8 lines and 9 lines. So it's known exactly where to put the adaptation of surface line calculation setting into a levels calculation to its circuits. Energy lines of pocket lines and location setting and position location of 12 lines in rotation. Okay, it's all set up. All right. Indirect position location, gone but still there. So the center position location line setting is really to understand how to use it through high volumes of levels. This comes in as VAST. VAST coordinates high centers of 2 panels into 1 set location. All right. Now the 1 line, you guys got to get used to that travel lines, right? Through 1, because the 1 is traveling, wants to travel. You don't just sit in a point view. It's like having a car sitting in the driveway and you never drive it. Doesn't make any sense buying a car if you don't want to drive, right? Well, that's what you do with 1. Or anything through 0 lines or anything through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You guys got to get used to that communication system. So use the correlation lines and locations and position location, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols as a car of mechanism location to get to in position location of travel through geometric operation of design to its geometry location system in calculation. Okay? So the 1 line changes the line communication of pi. Pi redirects the state locations into volume. Pi lines is set calculation setting in triangulation lines. Box is position location of travel lines. Out of the equation line interference in position location of travel lines in 1 line center and rotation surface that correlates the line rotation as center communication setting and a new clock rotation surface and set locations. Okay. Now, in that direct signal, we come into higher lines of volume. Remember, you're always working with volume, you're always working with VAS, you're always working with acceleration, you're always working with Mach. We all have to understand how to center its communication setting through all calculations. So the velocity of VAS changes the lines of the atmosphere and lines of atom. So that's 2 panels correlation setting in the systematic line calculation setting and travels of communication. Okay, directing signals and clock line rotation surface. So the actual clock becomes a portal calculation line setting in track communications to its set positions. All levels are set lines of travel settings in its opposite direction of system. Okay. So systematically inclined, it rotates its surface location of the sun and project location lines. It opens up line, position, location, and travel lines and higher line calculations to its energetic dome of stream location. Okay. So what's above is below. So you've seen the communication of the dome from above, the tippy point in position, location, track lines in communication setting. Okay. So in that center communication line directions, understanding position tractions. So in that settings, we come into this setting, rotation, center line rotation, Fibonacci line swirls, and set locations. Okay. And then we come into this line rotation. Okay. And then we go through electrical lines and high center interference. Now this gets really interesting locations. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Set lines of 9 in position of track lines, 9 set location of 6, 6 position location of 4, 4 lines it's 3, 3 lines it's 2, 2 lines it's 1 lines and high center line conditions setting, and 0, 0, and 0 line rotations, 2 panels, stream location setting, and direct signal. Now, in that system position location track lines, we come into a plasma line rotation surface. Okay, cod webbing, cod activation, stream location of setting, direct signal, and set locations. See the intelligence? See position track lines, calculation settings. You want to see the intelligence, this is what it is in set location. Okay? All right, so as we go in the center line, we all understand how it surfaces it through its electrical set location settings. Directing line settings, electrical lines. Omni-Veerderson line interference into the astral planes. Astral connection settings in the ether line rotations. Intergalactic, interdimensional line rotations in all calculations to its megaline screen lines, operation surface, and triangulation and reset line calculation setting, indirect signals, and set locations. Okay. So, intercharge, interlink, interface, directing signal locations to your settings and operation of the surface. All calculated and modified through set position. Okay? That my question. All right. So in signal line settings and high travel communication line directions, you come back in this lines of the frame positions. Okay? Changing direct signals. Now, in that line interference, we platted through this line set location system into a colossal line, rotation surface, and triangulation. Center lines its direct signals in position, location, and settings. Okay? So wind factors in the line center. Now, in that line rotation interference, the moon comes in position, location, of systems right here. Here's the moon, right? Surface lines of triangulation and position. Travels line center line calculations. Indirect signal of operation of 3 sectors in calculation. Okay? Back to its equation. Okay? Now, it's complicated what I'm doing, right? But it's also location line setting. The projections of your sun and the moon line and the time factor is in a 5-line composition of graph line screens. Now, this is convergent location setting and direct signals to its set location of systems. Formation lines and blocks into dome of hemisync. Very good. But it's very powerful when you set location of your settings and directions. So into line calculations, you can come into the intercoms and set location of travel lines. Okay. So we set up forming line, streamline. 2 position, 1 bracket line settings. 2 bracket line positions, 1 in sync, 1 in grounds. Okay. So the center line communications comes in this position locations, energetic normal line stream, directing signal locations at high setting. So the center position location center lines is operation, right? Space in between. Okay. Center calculations travels out. Flux capacitor. Now, in that line rotation interference, changes line calculation setting. So in that line calculation setting, indirect signal right here, sets up an alpha line wave. Redirect signals and line communications in position of monotone into calculation stream location to a system. Now, in that direct signal, you got an XT1000 lines on standby, right? And you got another one here in standby, right? And you got another one here in grounds, another one here, all right? So you got 2 low speeders in line calculation, high line setting, XT1000 rotation. Directing signals, they scan position location to its alpha wave line rotation surface. Directing lines crosses string lines in position of travel calculation settings and direct signal to its operation surface. Okay, done by equation. So the generic line string in set location in the alpha ways is set position location of 0 lines in 3 set locations. Line centers of 4, lines of 5, and set locations 6 in provision, 7 in rotations, 8 in calculations, and 9 in lines, high calculation of 0. Calculation line interference. Now we take the 3 lines in line and position locations and now to allocate line rotations into 4 zeros on rotation surface. Triangulation lines, equal line calculations, and 3 0 line rotations. Center position location of 7 digital frame line calculation settings. 91 line calculation center of operation stream of direct signal as application. Okay. Now the energetic graph line sets rotation spins. Now it has to spin on a certain line of communication to its setting and direct signal to its operation surface, knowing exactly what it's doing through travel calculation. In that direct signal line interference, we set up position locations in the center line. Calculation to its atom line rotation surface travels out of equation line settings and direct signal to the higher line position locations and direct line settings to your thought and position that travels. Done by equation. All right, so that's out lines, gone, but still there. How are we doing so far in information location and settings? Skill set lines and division. Okay. So we all have to understand how to use the central unit line string. A central unit line string is a calculated modify how you use lacing lines of communication of frames. So it's like files to a folder. So each file has a graph line setting because it's lines of 0, 8 lines of 9, and a 3-line window in position location of 12. Set positions, seconds, minutes, and the hours. So 3 clock line changed lines and stream locations setting and directions. Now the 9 line center lines as rotation surface sets position location up and line calculation setting to Merkaba and direct signal to calculation stream location to its top rotation stream location. Now, in that direct line signal, we change the galaxy lines and half pipe its position. Vortex stream lines and center position locations in higher calculations to the stream location of travel settings. Directing lines in rotation surface and set locations, right? Orders of calculation, right? See the intelligence, right? See the eyes, see. You have to understand the center operation is a space recognition time sequence. See? You see it? You see it? Okay. Lost in space. The robot. I can be their line setting. So in that direct signal, the rotation comes back in a rotation line stream in direct signal locations. The moon has to understand the circuit lines, stream lines, and calculation to its pockets in direction of time line. It rotates its surface in set location of travels. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so that's going to center up its operation line set location to its optimum. The optimum line interference sets the Oscar line calculation setting. So the astral line communications comes in the astral travels. Astral travel line settings come into mechanism. Mechanism line comes into alpha line rotation and set calculation stream locations. Now directing lines, high calculation metric, line locations into 2 balanced scales in direction of time sequence with position of panners and position of travel. Directing lines, Fibonacci line swirl, set lines of 1 line signature and position of 2 in rotation surface and set locations. Now, directing line streamline interference, we take the evident line center to the systematical. You guys have to learn how to travel through your letters now, okay? They all have to travel. Because like I said, what is the point of buying a car and just leave it in the driveway? Doesn't make any sense. Get in the car and drive. Same thing when you do locations with letters, numbers, shades, and symbols. Because it's waiting for you to understand you. So once you understand you understand the travel. Through anything through astral connections, astral projections, or astral levels in any line rotation. Systematic lines of 3 in travel communications into its relays into its operation surface. Travel communication 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Energetic graph line screens into delta waves. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 sets lines of window. 9 equals lines of window line rotations. 48 line graph line screens. 72 line rotations, 7 location and 144 grid line rotation setting, direct signals, puts special locations and 91 in track communication of setting. Okay. Now, in that direct signal, done by equation, right? Still there. So we go through the alpha tone lines, string locations of delta lines, theta line rotation surface and triangulation line setting and position operations, surface and train communications, indirect signal in one position of center calculation. Now, in the calculation line interference, we have the X3000 line coming in one line string location, right? Directing signals and settings, scanning the lines, center position of travel settings. Okay. Now, in that direct signal, one platitude's outline string right here, waiting on signal, right in the back, comes in center position. Okay. So it's in an outline center line in position location, so a 7 that's back in signal. Center coordinating the line directing lines is really understand the rotation spin lines and circle line rotation surface into its hubble of its position of traction. Okay. So we really have to understand how to use the alpha lines of zero lines in 1, zero lines in 2, and zero lines in 3 set location and settings. Gravity lock lines, change lines, rotation surface location of your system, how it allocates position and location in your astrologics. Now we change the graph line screen locations and settings, indirect signals, into your pi, erection of time sequence and calculation location. So that's all set up. So understanding how to use the zero line correlation directs the signals and position the travels into the center position. Okay. Center calculation line, direct line center into high position locations. We take the two lines and surface location as center line, rotation surface, and track communication. And center lines of 3-line rotation surface, we change the communication line stream interference. It comes into center communication setting, direct signals applications. All right. Down by equation. Look how powerful that is. Look how powerful that is in applications. So we all understand how to use the 3-line stream. It's all direct signal to your set location and your settings. Just have to understand how to use it through modification to your navigations, to your consoles. Tracking communication line direct signal is very powerful in suppositions to your operations. Okay. All right, so we come back on this line. Okay. So framing communication line streams, we change the correlation. Now that directs the location line system. Travel lines, lacing line, position location lines, and high calculations of portals, indirect signals, and wormholes in set location. Okay. Now that's got a direct panels. Okay, so we come in all levels in calligraphy line rotations, coming calculation interference. Now there's a calligraphy line stream directing line signals, comes in information location like Prismar does. As a signature line set location setting and direct signal to a travel reference time sequence, puts a coordinate line rotation of coordinates and set line directions into the center position of its operation surface in your time sequence. Okay? Done by equation. So now you understand how to use calligraphy signature line position program settings, all through calculations. Okay? Multi-pass. All right, so that travels out through signature stream locations, gone, but still there. All right, so changing line screens, we come back in this line rotation, this center position location of the operation. In that direct center line interference, we set up lines of zero line, center position location of zero line, and center position location of zero line. 3 zero line rotations. Travel calculations up and 3 signature line streams instead of position travel calculations. Okay. Now it gets very complicated because we're going to go through line position location up in sequence and direct signal instead of location of travel lines and set position line calculation setting into your vertebrae in set position. Okay. Graph line communication line direct signals, set position location of travel lines. Opens all signals, opens up balance and center position location to its atmosphere in position of traction. Okay. Very powerful stuff in position of traction. Right? That way equation. Okay. So the signature calculation center lines of the signature panel line rotation surface coordinates line settings in direct signals. Okay. And position locations and center line rotations. Okay. Now it's all about merging line setting because remember, they're not together until they're in position location operation. Center position of 0, line calculations of line setting. Center position locations of 1, lines of 2, 2 lines of 3, 4 lines, 5 signature string lines, 6 in line calculations, 7 in rotation, 8 in calculations, 9 in division, 10 setting on waiting, lines of 11, 11 line calculations of pi, and 3 set location of center, a sector location. Okay. Now in direct signal, you have to learn how to use the communication lines. It has 2 panels and line rotations. Each one has to have panels because you're connecting line interference with Father Space and direct signal locations of Mother Earth. So there's 2 panels on each line calculation setting, center operation of digital lines, digital frame, position of travels, and direct signal, set location setting, and direct location to its system. Okay. Now in that line interference, we come in a quantum change. Now the center calculation sends high direct signal to a set location to its settings. Direct line centers, 0 lines is 7. Okay, we come into 9 lines, 9 lines location system, 1 track communications, line direct signals, cross line, wind lines, cross the string locations, and 2 line rotation. Now it gets complicated. So the 2 panel line rotation service, okay, sets a port of deviation line triangle and line rotation of service locations. Now directing line centers, it's all teleportation string locations into line settings and triangulation. Okay, so you set up line graph line screens and set location line directions in your 12 signature patterns and rotation surface. Now in that correlation line center, the center position locations of 10 and 11 becomes 12 line centers and set location of trial settings. Okay. In this single modification lines, the singularity line rotates the center and center position of operation is center calculation. Rotates the surface in triangulation and a triangulation line. Sets direct signal locations in 3 sets in high position. Okay. Now in that calculation line interference, we take the panels lines. Now in that line direct location system, we set up a circle sphere, center direct signals and set line calculation setting in position location to your pyramids and center communication. Now the center communication line direct signal sets lines in 1 line string line and rotation surface in direct signal set locations. Now in that systematic line set location setting, that changes all correlation and coordinates and line direct signals of center communications in all settings into portal calculation setting and wormholes and a new direct signal and line calculation setting to half pipe position location abstraction. Very complicated stuff. It's all set up. Portal's communication is now set up line setting and track communication to this and provision location. Okay. Now, understanding that setting is understanding the mechanism line set location to a system. Okay. Remember this track line communication of frame? Right? Well, we got to add frame line streams because it's redirecting panels, rotation center lines of graph lines, rotation surface location of holograph line, position location of time served in line rotation to its system and track communication setting and all direct signal to its operation. Now it's done. Okay. So that surface is out. That rotates its line set location of service. All right. Directing lines, string lines, and back and set location lines of frame position. We change the correlations of timelines, directing signal lines, modification of center positions. This operates the circle lines into a course line change in direct signals of operation. Okay. So we go through this line. So this is what it is. 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 In direct location setting directions. Look how powerful that is. Look how powerful that is. Look at that. It doesn't get any more beautiful than what you see in position location. It's all set up location in your systems. All right. So in that line, then line rotation interference. That's what you have to understand. Try to understand how to use one. How to use one. How to travel through 2 panels. That's the equation, right? How to add up more ones at position location to its traffic. That's traffic right there. That's traffic through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 locations. Now, if you understand the indication line setting, this is where it comes in, position location to a system. Okay? In all direction. Right? And then you come into this graph line settings. Okay? Now, It's very powerful when you really understand how to set position location in your system through holographic line setting. It's all calculated and modified how you see yourself. So in that rotation line setting, graph line rotation, indirect signals, and set position. Okay. So the platforms are set up. The 0 lines at 12, lines at 24, 48, 72, and 144, of course, they go out in a rotation surface and track communications. So you get a solar direct line signal, and pi, erection of time lines, is signal location center. Now, in that direct line center, high interference of travel calculus line graph line string location crosses position of operation. Remember, you have to understand that platitudinal lines. So we're creating structure lines now. Okay, these are the structure lines that we're creating in position, location, high setting, and high center interference of travel communications. Okay, now directing lines, high position of travel lines, and center position of operation. Okay, how it travels its vortex location setting out line system. In that direct line center line interference, it comes in this line communications, what's above, what's below, same position location of travel settings. Now that rotates its center lines and particle string locations to travel settings, indirect signal location to its system of calculation setting, indirect signal to position, merging from all calculation lines into a coffee cup in set locations. Container to a cup in position. Now, directing modification line setting is all about understanding how to use the correlation setting direct signal to the sums of locations or pyramid lines, grounds lines or signal line stream location in the 4-line communication setting, and direct locations of panels and position location attraction. So that's understanding how you go from this to this to this to this. Okay, how this changes into this, any size lines, any height positions. So in that track communications, that's out of the equation line interference. That's all direct location settings of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Oh, look at that in position locations. But the most powerful thing is what you see is all levels of beyond recognition. Okay? All right. So go to formula equation line setting. One line, offline, one equals offline. Okay, the offline grid line sets one line perimeter, one grid line rotation, the center position. Okay. So the grid line sets lines communication of pi position location center lines at center positions. Merkaba up, Merkaba down, and set location of travel settings. Now understand the correlation lines of point systems. Now there's this space line stream lines and 3 set location settings, right? Directing lines as signature string locations in position. So you have to learn how to use the lacing lines of communications and portals of communication setting. So it's all about direct and redirect, flow direction of time sequence, going back in equation, and center line calculation sun and position location of the moon that operates as surface location of travel lines and direct signal to set location of settings and directions. Now directing line signature grid lines, you open up the grid line formation line stream and send location settings off grid line interference, put it back in position of travel calculation to its energetic graph lines, position location to its plateau in travel calculations. Done by equation. All right, so that's done. Okay, so what I'm doing, guys, is just basically setting up the panels linear timelines, setting up holographic line, stream line, center line interference, and metric communication setting, directing lines to your mind of consciousness and high position location of travel sets. It's all done through holographic locations. Directing lines, signature lines of 1, all right? Classification lines of dome lines of 2. Energy signature lines, alpha line, delta, theta, and line rotation interference and travel communications. Directing lines of wave lines, central lines of communication line settings, position high setting. Directing line rotation, center line rotation surface, and direct signal set location of center position of operation. Calculation modification line settings. So we change communications and direct signals in center position. Okay. Calculation modification triangulation line setting high center interference. Now in that direct signal, we come into this position location of the system and travel calculations. All right. Mechanism modified line in rotation into your magnetic line string location of travel settings and direct signal. In that rotation line interference sets lines of 0 line rotation in travel calculations in portals and position location of travel settings. Direct and signal lines of panel communication settings and direct signal. Done by equation. All right, so that's gone, but it's still there. So we got bracket communications and 2 line signals. 2 lines equal lines of 0, 0 lines equal lines of 1. You guys have to learn how to get into adding and subtracting, multiplying all that line rotation inference, but it's not math, it's maps. It's always correlating inference. Maps of equation is understanding how to take one and travel. Math of equation is understanding how 1 plus 1 equals 2 in position, right? This can't travel because it doesn't understand the travel mechanism of a source of space and time through pi, okay? So now you understand the importance of locations, how you have to come into indication, height, and interference, how to use the one through track communications, how it has to vortex and travel through settings. So when it travels, it comes back into its sun of operation, to its system, right? And the moon sets position location to its memory and line calculation setting into its emotional system of travel calculations. There's the moon in 4-track communications, skipping lines of timelines and 2 positions of panels of operation stream location system that you see line communication of light and night line streamline and position attraction. Okay? Very powerful set of locations, right? So you have to really understand how to use maps of equation in anything line setting, because maps of equation is getting to the next destination. So you take a 2-line setting, right? 2 plus 2, right, equals 2,000, right? It doesn't equal 4, does it? Because that's not the physical reality. The dimensional reality is your set location settings. So that's 1, 2, 3 provision line settings and travel calculation settings out of the equation. So in that line interference comes in track communication to its line system in position location to its operation center and position. Okay? Which comes into set line calculation setting to all lines of 3-dimensional lines that places in set locations. That's how it becomes line calculation setting. So the 3 lines is 0, 1, 2, and 3 is 3-dimensional locations, 1 position locations, 2 position locations, and 3 line connections of destinations. Okay? Through 1, 2, and 3. That's how it becomes 2,000 line setting. Because remember, everything that you do through dimensional line is everything through vortex. So you can change anything through anomaly, through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. But you can't do it through track location of math. It's got to be maps of equation, because that's what it's doing. It's changing the geometry and line settings and travel communication to its own geometric operation of design to where it needs to go through its destination of location, which is its dimension of space and time. Okay? Very, very powerful set of locations. All right? Always, always, always use that indication of settings. Because that's what you guys are coming into. New frame lines, a keyboard frame line, center line inference, how to use your keyboards or your alphabetical system. If you get an A-line track, that's an A-line track, but it looks like an A. Where's the line track in set locations? There's the line and there's the track in position locations. There's an A-line track right there. It's a road. A-line track. UFO comes in, scans position location to its center lines. Always scans the center, because what is it? Position track communication of space in between. Okay? So really understand how to communicate to everything through vision line setting. When you get a correlation of lines of 3, it's not number 3, unless you want it to be 3. 3 is 3. But if you want to take a 3 out of the equation of travel lines, it's now 3, 3, 3 in position locations. So it's no longer 3. It's a platform of communication. Okay? So 3 signature lines, 3 division locations, 3 center line calculations and activations, and 3 calculations to its position. See what I've done now? I've changed position. Track communications, add panels, rotation, surface, and track communication. Energetic graph lines, screen lines, high calculation setting, waving line, rotation to ground lines, high calculation modification to string locations of systems. Understanding how to use the grounds, how to see through electrical lines, a holographic line, string location to its systems of settings. Okay? So we all have to understand how to use it through equation now, right? So that's the importance of locations, using the map lines, everything. Map equals lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Okay, So map is the equation of everything through its atom. Because the thing is, you have to understand the calculations of rotation and set locations into molecules, into protons, electrons, neutrons, and photons. It's all calculated modified. So one has everything through its application system of its GOD as applications. Has its own geometric operation design. But not only that, it understands its particle system. Not only that, it understands its central system. Not only does that, it understands its operation. Not only that, it understands its dimension. Not only that, it understands its planet system. Not only that, it understands its universe, galaxy, location, setting. Not only that, it understands its relation, partnership with its application system, its friendship. Not only that, it understands its lights. Not only that, it understands its dimensions. Not only that, it understands everything in its application. All through provision, through GOD. Okay. There's a lot of calculation line settings because the thing is, everything is now live, and we have to learn how to use a setting. So you got a 7-line signature, and we got position location of thumbs up. All right. Set location setting, direct signal, high position locations, all levels of travel set locations. All right. 7-line condition, 7 with thumbs up. Right. 7 with thumbs up. But it's all electrical setting locations, right? So it's not actually the drawing, it's faster. So we change the 7, this is what the 7 looks like. This is what the 7 looks like. It's changing formation. You guys really get out of the equation. Get out of the mind line, get out of the box, get inline rotations, get inline calculation setting to the mind adaptation, how to use it in position attractions. So in that line condition, let's say you have a 9. Okay, so you see a 9 like this, and you see a 9 like this, right? 2 lines of 9, but they're not communicating with each other, right? Because it's 2 different intelligence, 2 different frames, 2 different operations, 2 different DNAs, right? They're still standing there, but they're separated until they're connected to each other. And once they connect with each other, they get to know each other in sublocation setting, direct signals through 9-line connection system, and travel calculation lines of the same 9 and position location and travel setting. 2 9s in the same position. Okay? That's communication. You got to go beyond the phenomenon line rotation in your child set location settings. So in that line center line interference, if you take 6 line position locations, there's a 6, right? Now, you want to get 6 to travel through its mapping sequence, change the directions. Okay? Now, in that position, you need the sun. The sun has to come to you. This is the sun coming to you. Okay, see that? Look how powerful that is, right? The sun comes to you, right? And the moon is set position location of this setting. This is the moon. You have to colorate the moon line center line interference because the sun is in the sun line and the moon is in its operation surface. That's in its direct location system of its motional system of coloration. It's motional line center location. So you're taking all your rainbow travel line settings and your graph line set location setting and position of travel communication in its dimensional line of a solar direct location setting in its solar sail of operation surface and set location system and position of traction. That's the sun and the moon together through 6. Look what I created. Everything is a face recognition location of travel. Okay? And if the moon wants to set out in position of travel, it will go this way in position and travel out. Now you can change the formation or you can keep it through the same setting. Right? You can keep it through the same setting or you can change it to the system location system and travel calculations. Okay? So it's really understand how to use the sun and the moon. So now you understand the importance, right? Let me do this again. I'll do this through 5. You guys got to do it through letters, numbers, and shapes. Start with shapes first. Numbers are very complicated. So this is the 5-line signature lines of your heart, right? To take the 5-line of travel communications, you come into this position, come into this position, come in this position, right? It's traveling, right? So it's traveling out, right? For it to come back, it's got to come back into the light. So this is where it comes into the sun. It covers its system locations on calculation, right? Now, this is the indication of pi. So 5 lines of signature, 5 lines of panels, 5 lines of operation, and 5 lines of location of travel. 5 lines, location of travel, in 5 locations, right? 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, pi. Understand? So you got indicated line at 15 minutes, line triangle lines. So you got 20 minutes position locations. You got 30 line circles, line rotation center. And you got another line calculations of 15 travel communication setting directions. All through 5, 5, 5. 5. Okay? That's how you use pi. The indication. All right? Powerful, isn't it? Let's go through 4. Let's go through 4. Let's go through 4. Okay? It's all different line setting. Let's go through 4. It's all bandwidth, but it's the same number. Nothing's changed. Okay? But it's different intelligence of different length, isn't it? So get them in position locations and communications with triangulations and line center interference and traffic calculation setting, direct signal, positions, operation. So they all communicate with each other in line calculation setting to the sun of their operation surface and location of travel settings. All through calculation, right? They're all connected to each other through the sun and through the moon. You need the lights and you need the moon. So you understand to bring in the light is to bring in the moon, okay? But you have to understand through pi now. So if you go through the line center line interference, that's 2 lines of direct location setting, travel line settings, 2 travels, equal lines of box. 2 equals travel lines equals box. But you know what the equal line setting is, right? What's above is what's below, right? So center calculation is 0 line is center position, right? Into your Merkaba, a set location of travel. Okay? Now, in that direct signal line interference, your box is your frame through pi, okay? Which becomes its set locational lines of its TV reception. Comes in line calculation setting to your system, right? Center position locations of operation and direction. Okay? Very powerful when you come in that position location interactions, right? Now you understand the importance of locations, how to use your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, how you travel out and you bring your sun and your moon back. Right? Now, in set line connections, you have 1 line, but you can change the sun line in the beginning and bring it in position location and travel settings. But where are you putting the moon? Where's the moon in position? Moon's got to be there somewhere. Where is it? Moon's here in track communication. This is the moon. You have to know exactly where the moon's going to be in set position. Right? So this is you in set locations, right? Looking up and set position to the moon. But the sun is there, okay? And the moon is here now. So the moon has traveled in set position of our operation. So you're directing signals now to this position. Now the moon's over here, but now it's a circle. And now it's in position to its communication with system of travel in set location, okay? You have to learn how to use the sun and moon now to project locations and get in its own communication system, because that's what it does to attractions, guys. Okay? Very interesting, isn't it? Same location line interference if you use infinity 8 rotation. Just an 8. 8 equals lines of triangulations and position location of 1. Equal lines in position of box. Calculations into pi and redirect signal. Right? So you have to understand, why did I cross line setting? Really understand everything has to travel. If nothing travels, nothing is in position to your frame. You won't see anything in positions to your projections of what you created through your image of your thought position recognition. Okay? So in that set line conditions, the 8 becomes a provisional location to its sun in the center line position location of operational line direct signal that sets a communication setting in direct system. Okay, all through 8. So we all have to understand how this all works inside your positions, right? How to use your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Very powerful, isn't it? Okay, I like showing you guys because this is what you have to understand, right? So in that line interference, I don't need to add the numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols because I already know it up here. It's already done. Everything I give to you is done. I'm not setting anything new. You guys are not at that level. You're in position location, your habitation, line stream interference. Your calculation stream location is now in center position operation to its setting in center line communication system, but you have to understand your memories first to understand the track communications, how to travel through line settings of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols to its operation. So let's say we go into 1 and 2 is over here and 3 is here and 4 is way up here, right? So 1 indicate lines. If you want to get that lines, 1 equals sun, 3 equals moon, 2 equals sun, and 4 equals moon. Okay? So the moon operates as setting lines, traffic calculation of the 3 line and rotation surface, right? 1 equals line rotation surface and redirect location of portals and vortex communication streamlines as location is systematical setting. Directing lines of 2 lines, equal line calculation setting, and direct signal as location system position of traction. Directing lines and lines of 4 lines rotates the surface location travel lines and position location high center interference and metric stream location settings and 4 galaxy line shift lines and communication system into 1, 2, 3, and 4. All through energetic wave line set location and settings. Set up position location line interference. Tunnels. All through 1, 2, 3, and 4. Through the sun and the moon. Track communication line interference. The moon sets line calculations. So you work with the moon, but the sun has to be there. Where's the sun in track communication in this settings? Right here. That's the sun. Okay? In position, that's the sun. Where's the moon? This is the moon. In set locations. All right? Center calculations, this is the sun. Where's the moon? The moon's here in position. Okay? Center position of 4. Where's the moon? Moon is here in set locations. Okay? So we all understand how to use it because it changes so many line set location in your settings. You start with your dimensional sails, and then you work with your solar generation stream locations of solar sails. Right? Powerful, isn't it? It's amazing how it comes in set location settings, turning 1, 2, 3, and 4 into all line centers of galaxy shift lines, into wind factor communication settings, into all line calculations and interference, into cluster communications, into cluster lines of a tunnel, a high calculation setting of a wind factor communication setting, and direct signal locations. All through the sun and the moon through all indication. Okay? Yeah. So now you know exactly what you're coming into, the line set locations, how to use more levels of you, because your mind is adapting higher lines of surface. Okay? So let's say you go through line interference, and you go through line position location of 4. 4 lines, right? Now you want to change the 4 lines into 4 wires. There you go, 4 wires. So 4 equals wires. So this no longer exists. It's a location of setting. It's gone. That's gone, and now it's 4 wires. But the indication line setting line interference is 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? You see how I change the wire lines into a number sequence? Change the position of track lines and set location line center interference of a seed pod to a capsule communication setting. Okay? That's a capsule now. So I'm just showing you all calculation. Now in that direct line center, that's at 5. So 5 is here. 5 wants to join. Right? So you got to get into, if you want to add equations, you got to get an equal line because it's another mechanism in line settings. So 5 wants to join, and it wants to create this in line set location of a system in position of balance. Okay? So now you got a line position location of capsule in position of 5 and a cycle line calculation. Okay? So we all understand how to merge all this all into one line connection setting and directions. How to surface that direction of the system, right? Look at the line string. Look at that. See? Look at the line cross. See that? See the line there? See the plasma line string? See that? See it? Watch my finger. See? See it's below, but see it travel from above? See? See? Look at that signature line string. Right here. It's coming from somewhere. It's all through shape, right? And so we all understand how this all works inside location setting. So now you understand that you're connecting more lines to your vision lines and turning it into a holograph location of string inside locations. All right. It gets more complicated when you're adding numbers. Let's go through 100. All right. So we got 2 panels, line, string location. Right. Zeros, cross lines, and high interference are 2 operations. Okay. Now in that line rotations, if I want to add another 0, right, I have to get into triangulation line set. The reason is because they don't know each other. So you got 100 communicating with their setting and they're creating something new in line set location of travel. But if you look really, really close, you can see the 5. See the 5 in its own geometry location of its own operation of its own dimensional space and time. Dimensional layers, guys. See the 5? And the complete the system location is this subtraction. There's the 5. You go in line centers the 3-dimension, 5th dimension, but this is a 5th dimensional setting into 100 line streams in center calculation setting in a 3 triangulation interface. Multipaths! I like to show you. It's so powerful when you understand how to put this all together. Put this all together. Okay? Says, I want to play. You know? That's what it is. So it's like you want to play, but they will allow you in. And they will allow you in because you don't know you until you know yourself. Until you know yourself, that's what you're coming into, right? I know, Gypsy. Isn't it amazing how to come into more levels of set locations and how to do things in positional equation? All right, so the signature line and line rotation interference. Let's go back in line center location of 7. I like 7 because it's my favorite number. 0, 0, 7, right? 0, 0, 0, right? 0, 0, 1, right? And 0, 0, 1. Okay? Complicated, right? So for the 7 to communicate with all that line signature, line stream interference, in set line communications, they have to put blocks around them. Okay? They got to put blocks around them in set positions to its location. Okay? Because they're protecting their system. So when they're protecting their system, because they're numbers and they're digital layers, they're not framed as you. So in that set line calculation setting, they have their own intelligent formation of cohesion to its system. That is tracks its communication line settings. So you find the space in between is center position of your setting location, and you center its center lines its own communication system of track communications. You send a direct signal to a system of center position, center calculation setting, and direct signal locations, and direct signal locations in 1, 2, 3 in high calculation. Okay. So I'm showing you so many different ways and forms how to use more position location in your settings. You got to go beyond the mind, and that's what it is. That's all this is. It's the most powerful thing that you can consume in your body, but you have to really understand has its own mechanism line setting of its own space of time through pi. Okay? If you get a 1-line track and a 2 lines and a 3-line rotation interference, there's the replication system of its own pi position traction. 1, 2, and 3, right there, right? 2 wants to play a line, center line, grade a clock line, rotation surface. There it is. 3 wants to stay in line rotation, send a ground line rotation surface calculation to a cluster. Triangulations in 1 line wants to service lines and create a line set line direct signal in position of portal communication setting and a teleportation unit in child calculation. Okay? All through 1, 2, and 3. All right? So that's what we have to get into. More levels of phenomenon of your imagination. Okay? All right. Good job. So you guys can watch this back whenever you want in that position location of track lines. All right. So tomorrow we have a marathon going from lines of 12 to 7, where we're going to be opening up Exodus line rotation interference into all lines of alliance, sending position location in your system, and track communication CPU. free activation line setting and track communication system, right? So what that means is the center communication you're setting is going to open up more track communication interference in the location you're interfacing. Track communication to its directions puts you in more levels of operation in your system and tracker calculations. All levels in the position line settings and our calculations to your system is all levels of its division to its locations. All right. Adios.